Good morning, everybody. This is Purple Update Live, the game day edition for the Week 17 matchup, the final regular game of the season against the Bears. The game that many have dubbed the mini bye. It doesn't look like most of the starters of note will be playing today, which I don't really know how to feel about. We can talk about that a little bit. I wanted to talk about an article that I posted late last night titled "The Vikings Are Squandering Their Super Bowl Window," and the worst part, they don't even know why, and some of the responses that I've gotten to it, as well as my thoughts just generally for the playoffs as it pertains to that article in general. I am sorry that I've been off the last couple days. If you can't hear it, don't feel that great health-wise or about the team. I don't want to, I don't want to get really repetitive and just keep harping on the same things, but I genuinely cannot recall a time, and I'm not just saying this for effect, where I felt this down about the team, at least in terms of it being a single issue. I wanted to do more shows this week after Monday. I wanted to look at what other sites were saying, what other writers were saying about Monday Night Football. And it doesn't seem like people are grasping what the issue is. They talk about Monday as almost like a single entity. They talk about it as three separate issues that are kind of related but not really. So a lot of the articles that I've read from Star Tribune or Pioneer Press or anywhere essentially say there was three problems with the game on Monday. Cousins played like shit. The offensive line was terrible, and there was dubious play calling from Zimmer and from everybody else. I agree with Walter is the first commenter, and if you're new to the show, feel free to comment. I see all the comments regardless of what streaming platform you're on, and I do tie those into the show. I do agree that the team does need to rest, but I would love to see the first team offense out there for outside of Dalvin Cook, obviously, for long enough to maybe get the taste of Monday Night Football out of their mouths. Now, I don't think that it was an execution problem. That might not surprise many of you who have watched this show before. But again, the three issues that they point to: Cousins playing like shit, the line, and play calling. It won't surprise a lot of you that have been here that I am going to blame the latter for most of it. Yes, the offensive line played bad. Yes, Zadarius Smith had a career day. But he at no point did it really look like Stefanski changed the game plan. Look at the Broncos game. The first half, the offense did nothing. They came out in the second half with an up-tempo offense, ran some no huddle, changed everything. They didn't seem to do that Monday night. On top of it, there's some quotes from Zimmer after Monday night, immediately after the game, and then a few days after Monday night that I talk about in the article. And it basically, after the game, he said, well, we couldn't run those the plays that we're good at, essentially. We couldn't run a lot of bootlegs or rollouts because the Packers did a good job of containing us and not allowing us to run those plays. First of all, if that was true, I wouldn't even agree with it. But it ended up not being true. Zimmer, a couple days later, kind of, as the Star Tribune said, changed his tune and simply said, yeah, we should have run more of those plays. Probably should have run more of those plays. I find it incredible that after that game, he didn't even know why they didn't run those plays as the head coach. He guessed. He said, we didn't do it because of this, and that wasn't why. Zimmer is really hands-off with the offense, and I understand that. He's a defensive-minded guy. he has faith in Stefanski and Kubiak and company, but for him to not even really know why they didn't do it, I think is a huge indictment on what he does as a head coach or what he doesn't do. It just blows my mind. For it to be this late in the season, for the game to be that important, and for him to say, well, just spitballing, I guess, and he's not open with the media. I understand that, but then why was he? That's not what that was, because otherwise he wouldn't have then later told the truth if he was just lying to throw the media off or whatever. And so it's just, I have no faith in them figuring this out. Yes, the offensive line played bad. Yes, it's hard to run play action when you don't have your top two running backs. I get that. But you don't completely deviate from what you're good at and then go into what you know you're not good at just because you're missing those running backs. You can still run play action plays. You can still run screens. You can still run bootlegs. You can still run rollouts. And for Zimmer to not even really know why they didn't do it after the game, for him to say, well, I don't know from the sideline, I have to watch the tape. Well, you should know, just because you should know what the game plan was. You should know why you didn't do it, is an issue. The other issue is not helping Riley Reef against Smith. I mean, yes, Smith blew up whatever their game plan was. He was in the backfield all night. He was disrupting running plays, not just passing plays. But that's essentially the crux of the entire article, is if it's week 16 and you still have a chance to win the division, which I got this super ironically timed hat for Christmas, which I still love because it reminds me of all the things this team is doing horribly. Huge game. You can still win the division. You can still really change your playoff fortunes by not being on the road. And for him to say, well, we didn't run it because they were doing a good job of containing it. So we couldn't run them. And then to later say, well, yeah, we got Cousins out of the pocket once. He had all sorts of time. We probably should do a better job of getting him, not just standing in one spot all the time. Really? You probably should. I mean, I'm not harping on how he said it, but obviously you should. And you should have known that week 6. So I have zero faith that they're going to do anything in the playoffs because they don't seem to learn the lesson that we keep talking about. And that's honestly why I didn't do any shows this week outside of feeling like crap, is I don't want to just keep pushing this don't get too cute thing. But I genuinely think that we need to start a hashtag and try to get it going. And then I have to get those shirts approved from the shirt provider that we do, because apparently the logo wasn't high res enough, so I can do that this week. But I'm terrified about what's going to happen in the playoffs, because I have no faith in them doing anything. And what's in outside of the Super Bowl window and all of it, and wasting all this time and money that you've spent in general and on Cousins, is we still don't know the type of quarterback we have, because we don't know how he would do against good teams. Because whenever we play a good team, we don't run the plays that he's shown he's good at. I mean, he's shown that he can execute at an MVP level on this team when they play to his strengths. He's shown that. The fact that he was throwing balls in the feet of his receivers early in the Packers game should have shown the coaching staff that he was not comfortable with what they were running, that it wasn't working, that he didn't have the time to do it, but instead they just kept doing it. I mean, the Vikings were winning before halftime. They had the ball, and the crowd was booing them because there was like no get up and go. There was no conviction. There was just nothing. It was like running a 2-minute drill. I would almost say in the preseason, but you're working on things then, so you still try to run a 2-minute drill, maybe a 2-minute drill during the Pro Bowl or something. I don't know. It's maddening. That quote from Zimmer was maddening. It reminded me of the quote from Prefer about Matt Weil, where he's like, well, apparently no one ever taught this guy how to hold for kicks. Like, well, shouldn't you have known that before you brought him in? Isn't that kind of a big part of his job? For Zimmer just to say two different things about why they didn't run any of the plays that this team has succeeded at, it's too much. It's gone too far. So Monday night was a microcosm of what has bothered a lot of us about this season and Zimmer as a coach in general. And that article has gotten like 15,000 views, and I posted it at like 11 o'clock last night. And the only comment it's received so far is someone saying it was just one game. And I want to reiterate, I'm not talking about just one game. I'm using one game as an example as a microcosm of larger issues. Zimmer gets outcoached either by opposing coaches or by himself on defense. He over-schemes. He doesn't let his guys play. That's been an issue. Now, on offense, he's completely checked out. Stefanski, I don't know why everyone keeps talking about him as some future head coach. Maybe he will be. I don't think he'll be a good one. He has the same issues Zimmer does. Neither of them can deal with in-game issues. They can't adjust either to the other team's game plan or to in-game adjustments from the other team. The perfect example being not doing anything really to help Reef Monday night, not chipping, not putting, even Kyle Rudolph over there, not putting CJ Ham over there, not putting Mike Boone over there. Boone's a good blocker. It boggles my mind. But back to what Walter said, resting players is good. I agree with that. You don't want anyone to get injured. This team has done, outside of Thielen, a relatively good job of avoiding the injury bug all season. Then all of a sudden it just came like all at once. But I would like to see them, from a confidence standpoint, get the taste of Monday night out of their mouths. That having been said, I don't even think it was that much of an execution issue as much as it was a game plan issue. So maybe that's not that big of a deal. I don't know. I'm a little worried about Thielen. I don't think he's, obviously he wasn't on the injury report this week, but he does not look good. He didn't look good Monday night. I don't know. I don't think it's going to matter. I mean, what's infuriating to me is that this team has shown that it can hang with every team that it's played. That not only can it hang, but that it should probably have beaten a lot of them. The Seahawks, they could have won that game easily, if not for that disastrous third quarter and some of the weird game plan issues on offense. I mean, it was touted as like the number one and the number two play action quarterbacks in the NFL. And we did limited play action stuff. Tang checked in and say he'll be in the live chat. We will be doing a live chat for this game on both sites. You don't need an account on the sites to participate, but it takes like 2 seconds to make one, and then you can hop on the message boards and respond to my article about the Super Bowl window. Walter said he would like to see how Mannion looks. I'm interested in that as well because, not to keep plugging my article, but essentially my point was, Zimmer's contract is up at the end of next season. If they're one and done, which I would bet everything that they will be, do you keep him? I mean, because you can... the reason that I wrote that article in the first place is because I work at a liquor store a couple nights a week, doing a lot of like their computer stuff, their social media stuff, blah, blah, blah. And every single person that I saw, everyone knows about the sites, and like I've joked about, I have guys coming in asking me what the over is, what if I would take this bet, that bet, and I'm not a big betting guy, but I don't mind seeing someone else's life ruined. I'm kidding, but every single person that I saw, I'm not even kidding, on Thursday was like, Cousins sucked. What's up with your boy Cousins? It was all about Cousins. And I was already in a bad enough mood about the game, but I just felt like some of these, not everybody is as into football as we are. They don't read as much as we do. I understand that. And I can see from an eye test standpoint why it seemed that way. Like those throws early that were just like 2 seconds, like he was throwing it away before the play even had a chance to develop. I get that, but it just really took all of the strength in me not to write another defending Cousins piece, and this article kind of started that way. I initially wrote it that way, and then I changed it because I felt like you have two options. I mean, this team is like I said in the article, I think we're gonna go look back at this team being such a missed opportunity. And I applaud Zimmer for everything, but not every coach can go the distance. I mean, we saw with Flip Saunders and the Timberwolves, he had a great winning percentage. They made the playoffs every year, but for the most part, they lost in the first round every single year. I just think Zimmer's legacy is going to be that. I don't think he's a championship level coach. I don't even think he's really a head coach. I think he's a glorified defensive coordinator. I would have no issue even keeping him on as defensive coordinator. Now, that would never happen. I would have no issue keeping George Edwards on either. I think the solution is already there. I think Kubiak would be an amazing head coach because he's shown in Denver that he can go the distance with a team that has a superior roster. And even not even that great of quarterback play, if that's your argument, that Cousins sucks, which is not my argument. But he's an offensive-minded guy, which I think is very important. I think when we've seen this offense humming at high efficiency, that's more Kubiak than Stefanski. But you could keep Stefanski on, I guess, but have Kubiak call the plays, Stefanski help with the week, day-to-day stuff during the week. Because, these guys are getting older. Sure, they're all locked into 2023 for the most part. But as we've seen, the older you get, the more injuries you get. You got Xavier Rhodes is only 29, but he looks 100 years old. And so I don't know if you can wait another year just for them to not win. And someone has to be held accountable for the fact that this team is not hitting its goals, and the ownership and the management of this team has invested more than I have ever seen in my entire life as a Vikings fan. I am not used to this level of just grade A, super high class. They run this team like it's astounding to me. Going from Red McCombs and what a piece of shit that guy was, and how he milked this team for every dime, and he put no money into it, and he just wanted to move them, and so he almost wanted the fan base to be mad because he wanted to be able to move them without, death threats and all that from me. Say what you will about how much the public paid for the stadium, and by the public I mean the state paid, Hennepin County paid a lot, still is paying. But when they had to step up and pay more for certain things, they did that. TCO, it's like the best facility in the entire league, and it's in Eagan, Minnesota. Every single thing Zimmer has wanted, he's gotten. In terms of free agent spending, in terms of using draft picks to build the defense that he would build if he knew how to play Madden. And if you turned off skill point limits, he got everything he's ever wanted. And I just don't think the results show that. Yes, the regular season record has been good. Yes, has the best winning percentage of any coach the Vikings has had. Yes, he made it to the NFC Championship game, but he got blown out. Then the Vikings go 8-7-1, miss the playoffs. This year, I would not be surprised if they lose today because they're not playing anybody. They go 10-6. So what is that? A 2-game improvement? Or a game and a half improvement, I guess? I don't know. And let's assume they lose in the first round of the playoffs. Is that good enough? Is that enough of an improvement to you guys to continue doing this for another year? Or do you say, okay, we only have Cousins locked in for another year. We need to change and try something else? It's obvious what my thoughts are on that. Whether or not the team would do that, I don't think they would, barring something huge. But I mean, I just don't think that these are the goals. The goals weren't to just make the playoffs again. They were to win the division, to make the Super Bowl. They're not going to do either of those things. And you can replace Zimmer with somebody in-house, but you can't do the same with Cousins. You would either have to draft somebody, or, I mean, there are a lot of potential free agents this year. But who, I mean, who, I don't know. I feel like we've seen Cousins play at an elite level when used correctly. And I'm not saying that Cousins is perfect, and I'm not even saying that, you know, all quarterbacks have strengths and weaknesses. You know, going into like the Super Bowl, for example, if the Ravens are there, which I'm thinking they will be. Let's say they all of a sudden said, okay, to Lamar, like, you're going to, this team is really good at stopping running quarterbacks. So let's just have you stay in the pocket. They won't see it coming. Don't run. We're not going to run any RPO stuff. We're just going to, blow their minds and run a bunch of 3 or 7 step drop stuff. Take away everything he's good at, everything he's succeeded at. Now, that's not a complete apples to apples comparison, because I'm sure he would be fine doing that. Or other quarterbacks are good at things and not good at other things. I think Cousins is good at play action and getting out of the pocket stuff, and really bad at like shotgun spread stuff. And I think sometimes when he plays well, Stefanski and company thinks, well, why couldn't he do these other things? It's not the equivalent even of Lamar Jackson not running or not doing RPO stuff. It's essentially really similar stuff. Because it's not like he's running a whole lot or anything. But for whatever reason, and I think I know why, I've talked about it on this show before, I think that he knows he can't sense pressure. And because of that, either consciously or subconsciously, he's always freaking out a little bit that he's going to get hit. And so he rushes throws, or it just screws up his throwing motion in his mind. This might be a very specific story that no one else relates to, unless they have a drinking problem like I do, and are terrible at bowling. So this isn't going to reach that many people, but when I go bowling, I'm a bigger guy. I'm 6'3", 250 pounds. So you think I'd be pretty good at bowling. I don't know why. But or even in golf, when I am like doing my backswing, my mind goes a little crazy. Like, it's just like too much pressure for me. Bowling alone is too much pressure for me. Yikes. I just think about it too much, and I end up just blowing it. But when I don't drink anymore, so I've been sober for 7 years. But when I used to drink, when I'd get to like 4 or 5 drinks, it would shut that off, and I would be great. But then when I would get to 6 or 7, I would kind of go too far, and then I would just be drunk, and it would just be a mess. Golf was the same way. Pool was the same way. I was an amazing pool player between drinks 4 and 5. And so I get that aspect of it, and I think that happens to Cousins. And so I think when he especially rolls out to his left and he sees the blindside pressure then to his right, it shuts that off for him, and he's able to make amazing throws. I mean, he can make every throw on the field, and I think that's, again, where Stefanski and company say, well, why can't he do this? Why can't he do that? But he can't. And I'm not saying that's normal. I'm not saying that other quarterbacks are that hit or miss in what they're good at or what they're bad at. Other quarterbacks might not be as good at what they're good at, but they definitely might not be as bad as what Cousins is not good at. if that makes sense. And so, it's just maddening again for a guy like me. I mean, these were things we knew before Cousins even got here, that he has happy feet. He doesn't pick up pressure, and that was the frustration last year with the Mike Hughes thing. Why didn't they get more interior offensive linemen? They wasted a whole year because they knew Cousins was bad when he was pressured, so why didn't they bolster the offensive line? I mean, why would you invest this much money in a quarterback and then not invest in the offensive line via the draft? Then they do that, and then you think, okay, things will be different. And, then I thought it took a couple games for them to figure out what Cousins did well, because last year was such a shit show. They had no line, no run game, no consistency from the offensive coordinator, who we had two of them. One got fired. And then it's just the lack of consistency. Again, it boggles my mind. And for Zimmer to say it that way, we couldn't do it because they wouldn't let us do it. And then, oh, well, that wasn't really it, but yeah, we should probably do a better job of not keeping them in one place all the time. Really? Jesus. And so Walter said there was not a lot of play action because Cook was out, and I've heard that too, and I've alluded to that a little bit on today's show. That still doesn't mean you don't do it, though. I mean, play action works better when the opposing team fears the running back, because then they bite. Then they might jump ahead because they're like, oh shit, we got to, get on top of it, because he might, house it on every play. But it still works even with the league's worst running back, because it's not predicated on the offense. The benefit you get, again, from having a good running back is that guys might jump because they're afraid of his talent and they want to stop it, right? You can still run those plays with a bad running back, especially when you have the best wide receivers in the NFL, especially when you have a really good 1-2 punch at the tight end position, because you come out in a run formation anyway. They're going to have perhaps, 7 in the box. I would take Cousins at his most comfortable throwing to Thielen and Diggs regardless, over not doing that, over what the alternative was. And so I've heard of a lot of people saying, well, yeah, you can't do it because Cook wasn't in. You can still run those plays. Essentially what that means is, because Cook wasn't in, we were already hurt in the run game and the pass game because of the lack of his ability to get yards after the catch on the screen. But they also let the fact that he and Madison didn't play hurt the entire offense, because they didn't do anything they were good at because of it. I'm not articulating that the best, but essentially you get what I'm saying. Because they didn't play, we ran nothing that we were good at. And it's just, it makes no sense to me. You can still run those plays. I'm not yelling at you. It's just, you can still run those plays. You can still run screens. I think the most damning thing about that entire game and about this season, outside of Zimmer's quotes, was the fact that Booger McFarland, a guy named Booger, who every week has a viral moment of stupidity out of the booth in the Monday Night Football booth, said, maybe run a screen? It was like the end of the third quarter when he said that? Maybe try a screen. I don't know. I mean, you're pretty good at it. I mean, for him to say that blows my mind. It's insane. It is insane to me that we're even talking about this still. And that's why I didn't want to even do a show this week, because I thought it's like insanity. And I'm not implying that they're listening to these shows or they're reading these articles, even though they do read a lot of stuff. You guys would be amazed at some of the things that I've heard from the team or people around players. But I feel like I'm talking about the same things over and over again, and they're not learning from them at all. And I don't mean learning from them from me, but from their own mistakes in terms of outcomes and whatnot. RC1M, what's up, man? Are they playing to win today? I suppose. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of backups in. I'm sure those guys really. I mean, it's a huge opportunity for them. For Mannion, it's a big opportunity for him to show that he's the right guy as the backup. Treadwell's gonna get a lot of time. Boone will have a chance to try to right things from last week. BC Johnson, we're going to see a lot of Irv Smith. Those guys are really going to be playing lights out. The coaches, I'm sure, are going to want to win. They want to be 11-5 more than 10-6. So sure, I think they're playing to win. Now, whether or not they're going to be able to win is beyond. I don't think they're going to win. I'll put it that way. The Bears still have a really good defense. They have a really good defensive front. I think it's going to be a really rough game. I could see it being low scoring on both sides of the ball, or for both teams. But Mannion and Treadwell and all those guys, going up against Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, ooh, it could get ugly. So we'll see. I am interested, like Walter said too, in seeing what Mannion can do. I don't think we saw a whole lot of that. I think he got wrongly. A lot of people were really into Slaughter for good reasons. I mean, he looked good. He's very flashy too, or he was very flashy. I'm speaking about him like he's dead. But Mannion also had a really good preseason statistically. It's just that, I mean, he had that really bad pick six, which wasn't his fault. That was BB's fault. And he just wasn't as flashy as Slaughter was. And so it would be great to see him do well. But, he's going to be playing against a really good defense. And so we'll see. I mean, it doesn't, I guess, really matter. I was not a big fan of people after the Packers game saying that game didn't matter anyway, because I think it did matter. I think it mattered a lot. I think it mattered to the confidence of this team. I think it mattered because they still had a chance to win the division. And so I don't want to say this game doesn't matter, but outside of perhaps having the offense out there just to get that taste of ass out of their mouth from Monday night, it's not really going to matter that much. So we'll see. I don't know. I'm just very down about things, and I'm hoping that Monday will, from what Zimmer's comments were and his realization that they do need to run more of those plays, that might be it. Maybe they'll realize they need to do that. Because I would much rather just lose straight up and say, okay, the Saints or the Packers beat us because they just played better than we did. I've yet to feel that way in a loss since week 5. I've just felt like we've really beat ourselves, and that's an additional level of frustration. It just would, if they went out, put their best effort forward, and ran the types of plays that they're good at, and they just got beat versus, running some weird 3rd and short Diggs pass to Cousins, gimmicky stuff, or spread offense stuff, or shotgun spread offense stuff. Just in general, that's worse. But it's an additional level of shit when you also, have this quarterback you have to make a major decision on, and you don't know how he plays against good opponents when used correctly. So they're just wasting all of this time that they could be learning things about the future. And so we'll see. I don't know. I want to ask a question of you guys really quickly before we go. Maybe we can talk about this tomorrow. But which team do you want to play next week? Packers or Saints? Obviously, the Vikings have yet to beat the Packers this season. Um, I'm hearing from a lot of people that I interact with, like outside of the internet, real people. I don't know if you guys have heard of these. I just learned about them. They're called real people. I don't know. They're not like in the computer. They look like I do, and they're real. Um, Everyone seems to want to avoid the Saints, and I can see why. But at the same time, it would. Oh my God! Can you imagine if we beat the Saints in New Orleans? Ugh, that would. Ugh. I mean, beating Green Bay in Green Bay would be additionally good, but uh, I hate the Saints almost more than the Packers because the Packers, you're supposed to hate them. It's like you grow up and it's kind of kitschy. And, the best way to put it is when I see a Packers fan on the street in the off season, I might give them shit, but it's kind of lighthearted, like at the liquor store, like, oh, wait, sorry, can't serve you your hat, ha ha ha. Aren't we fun? Don't we have, souls and all that? It doesn't matter what time of year it is. When I see a Saints fan, I actually want to hit them with my car. I actually hate them, and they earned that hate. You know what I mean? The Packers, we grow up, all of our dads are like, yeah, those are the Packers. We hate them when we're little kids. It's ingrained. It's a division foe, so on and so forth. The Saints earned that hate. It's not a rivalry. It never was. It's a pure hatred. And it still feels very visceral because Breeze is there. Sean Payton is there. Their fans are awful. And so, I mean, if I knew we were going to beat either team, I would say I would rather beat the Saints in New Orleans than the Packers in Green Bay. I mean, we've done that before when Moss put that W. He put the W down on Lambeau. I would just love to do it again, to beat the Saints, but do it in their house. We could call it the New Orleans Miracle. I'm not good at stuff like that. Anyway, I'll have the live chat up here in a minute. The game's starting in a few minutes. I'll be back at halftime and then after the game. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and check out the article after the game if you want to, because it might be our biggest article ever. Sports fan 89 said he couldn't agree more about the hatred. Kindred spirits, man. All right, Skull. Feel free to join the live chat at VikingsTerritory.com, purplePTSD.com.